All right, well, it's time now for the campaign beat. That's our daily roundup of the news from the French presidential campaign trail. That's with Florence Filomeno. Hi, Flo. We are going to start off with big news of the day. This is French prosecutors who've asked the European Parliament to lift Marine Le Pen's immunity over a fake job scandal.
Well, remember, Marine Le Pen is an MEP, and she's accused of misusing public funds to essentially pay two assistants at the European Parliament for allegedly fictitious jobs. Now, she used her parliamentary immunity to ignore a summons from an investigative judge, and she has described this whole investigation as a vendetta. Now, she spoke on the radio this morning, and she shrugged off this request to lift her immunity. Take a listen to Marine Le Pen.
It's normal. It's the normal procedure. I'm not surprised at all.
You're not upset about the timing? You could say it's all about harming your campaign.
No, I think it's normal.
Do you regret not going to the judge?
We're not going to come back on that. We've talked about it for months. We're 8 days away from the election.
You don't regret it?
No, not at all.
So now, Flo, we do know that the fake job scandal hasn't affected Marine Le Pen as much as it has one of her rivals, François Fillon. Of course, he himself involved in a financial scandal. That's hurt his campaign, but Le Pen, she remains one of the frontrunners with just over a week to go.
It's really interesting to see the difference because they're both facing pretty major scandals. Marine Le Pen seems unaffected, while Fillon has really been affected. He's really dropped in the polls since the so-called Penelope Gate scandal. Now, analysts say it's because Marine Le Pen's scandal involves the European Parliament, which is further from French people's hearts and minds than the National Assembly, even though it still is taxpayers' money. Now, analysts also say it's because the National Front has a very steady and loyal support base, including a growing number of young people. Now, France 24's Luc Schrago has been following the far right. Let's listen to his report.
It's been 15 years since the National Front's shock breakthrough to the second round of the French presidential election. Now, ever since Marine Le Pen took over the reins from her father, she's been trying to break with his way of doing things. It seems to have worked. Her message is resonating with old and young alike.
The image of the National Front has changed. Young people now are patriotic and proud to wear the colours.
It has conviction. It's the France I want to be like it was before, as I knew it. I'm not racist. All the immigrants who are here will stay, obviously. But what I condemn are all these refugees who arrive en masse every day. There are no jobs, no housing. We have to stop it.
Marine Le Pen is the top candidate for people aged 18 to 35. As soon as they leave home and go out into the real world and see how hard life is, they see that Marine has the right answers.
That kind of youth support seems to be a defining feature of today's National Front. After the perceived failures of successive governments on both the right and the left wing, the party knows that attracting disillusioned youth to its policies now should pay dividends in the years to come.
A lot of young French people are rapidly starting to notice the failures of the policies of our predecessors, of Fillon, of Hollande, and they know that if there isn't a radical change in politics, they're going to have problems finding a job or pursuing their studies. They're the first victims of these policies.
Indeed, it's the National Front's youth wing that's giving people a look at what may be to come in the years ahead. Now, it counts on the support of 40% of French youths aged 18 to 24, and its numbers have more than doubled over the last 5 years, from 10,000 to 25,000. Now, even if Le Pen fails to carry the election this year, with that kind of growth, it may be that all she needs to do is wait for the tide to come in just that little bit higher next time round.
Now, you might think that you misheard there, but that statistic that Luc was talking about is very real. 40% of 18 to 24-year-olds plan to vote for the National Front in this upcoming election. And that is a real change. Traditionally, young people have voted for the left, but clearly the far right is no longer taboo. Now, analysts say it's proof that Marine Le Pen has successfully managed to whitewash her party's negative image, but it's also a sign that lots of young people are frustrated because of the economy. Remember that youth unemployment hovers around 20% here in France.
Indeed, Flo, and we are seeing seeing young voters. They're going both to populist parties and on the right with Marine Le Pen, but also on the left in terms of the far left's Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He's just rising in the polls.
He certainly is rising in the polls, and there have been lots of polls about Jean-Luc Mélenchon. In fact, one recent poll suggested that he's actually the candidate that young people trust the most. So it seems like he's neck and neck with Marine Le Pen on this one. Our reporter Chris Moore followed some Jean-Luc Mélenchon supporters in the northern town of Roubaix. Take a listen.
Doing the rounds in one of France's poorest towns. These volunteers are campaigning for Jean-Luc Mélenchon. At just 25, Paul's hoping to become a member of parliament. He says he went into politics to help the young.
The youth here are the worst hit by unemployment and the economic crisis and social crisis in poor neighbourhoods. They feel forgotten, like these elections don't concern them.
Despite Mélenchon's promise of wealth redistribution and improved welfare, convincing young people here to vote isn't always easy.
I voted for François Hollande in 2012, but he did nothing, and people are disillusioned. You elect a president, but at the end of the day, nothing changes.
To start off with, I didn't want to vote because it didn't interest me at all. Then I talked to my family and we've decided to vote for Mélenchon. We just hope that he'll put his program into practice, unlike all the other presidents.
A recent poll showed Jean-Luc Mélenchon overtaking Marine Le Pen in the battle for young people's votes. But securing them in places like this is an uphill struggle, faced with poverty, apathy and a dislike of politicians.
Well, now, Flo, before we go, we do know that despite their best efforts, we've seen an unprecedented, election, and young people aren't the only ones who feel frustrated.
It's really interesting, this election. It's so crazy in terms of polls, and there's one poll that really caught my attention this week. According to a poll by Ipsos Sopra Steria, 67% of French people feel disappointed, disgusted, or angry with respect to this presidential campaign. Essentially, they can't wait for it to end, and I have a message for them. It's almost over. We're in the home stretch. We'll know pretty soon who's going to make it to round two.
We will indeed. Once again, that's Sunday, April 23rd, the first round vote. Flo, thank you very much for that. Now, if you're interested in the French election, do check out the Election Compass. Well, it's a tool developed by France 24 in partnership with Vox Pop Labs, and it calculates how your political views compare with those of the French presidential candidates. And that can lead to some surprising results, it has to be said.